it's Trotti here. If you're a Nikon user trying to choose a 35mm lens, this video is for you. I'm comparing all of Nikon's current 35mm prime lens options side by side at a portrait photo shoot to help you decide which one is worth it.
So it'd be cool if you want to stand like just here where it's a bit sunny and shady. It's a little bit tropical looking.
Oh yeah, it totally is.
So we're going to start off with a mid-length shot here, and I've got a lot of negative space and some beautiful bokeh that we can take a look at the top half of the frame. And I'm starting off on the 35 1.2.
In order of price, these are the lenses I'm using today on the Nikon Z8. We have the 35mm f1.8, 35mm f1.4, and 35mm f1.2. We'll be looking at things like subject separation, bokeh, sharpness, and autofocus performance.
I've swapped over to the 35 1.8 now, and I do have to lower my shutter speed because I am shooting at f1.8 for this one.
So let's start off with the build. All three lenses feel well made, but they do differ quite a bit in size. The f1.8 is the lightest lens of all at 370 grams. Next, we have the f1.4, which weighs 415 grams. And finally, we have the 1.2, which is the heaviest at about 1 kilo. The f1.8 and 1.4 are both relatively compact and use a 62mm filter thread. The f1.2, on the other hand, is a lot larger and uses an 82mm filter thread. All three lenses have a focus ring. The f1.4 and 1.2 both have a customizable aperture ring, while the f1.8 does not. The f1.8 and 1.2 both have an AF to MS switch, whereas the f1.4 doesn't. The f1.2 is also the only lens that has two customizable function buttons, so your first consideration is whether you prioritize image quality or size and weight. This will depend on how you shoot, whether you travel with your gear, and how long your shooting days are. Personally, I don't mind using heavier lenses if it means better image quality, but this will come down to your own preferences.
And last but not least, we have the 35 1.4.
Throughout this photo shoot, I'll be showing you all the unedited photos first at 100% crop so you can see the true details, and afterwards my edited version. I'm using my new Meadow Lightroom preset pack to edit these images as I wanted a very clean and natural look. I'll leave a link down below if you want to get it for yourself, and I'll also leave a link to my online workshop all about natural light if you want to learn how to capture images like this without the need for any extra lighting or equipment. I'll share all the photos one by one first, and then at the end of the location, I'll have all three images side by side so you can take a good look between them. One of the first differences you're going to notice is the bokeh.
So in this spot, we're gonna take kind of like a medium portrait in landscape orientation, and we've got all these trees in the background to look at the bokeh in this shot. And I'm starting off on the 35 1.2.
The f1.2 has the widest aperture out of all three lenses, and you can consistently see it throughout all the comparisons I captured. It creates the strongest subject separation. The image is just so buttery smooth, and Devon really pops in the frame. With the f1.8 and f1.4, the background becomes more prominent and slightly busier in comparison. You're still getting good separation with both lenses, but the effect isn't as strong as it is with the f1.2.
So now I'm on the 35 1.8.
Aside from the amount of bokeh, there is also a difference in the quality of the bokeh between these lenses, which you can really see in busy outdoor environments like this. Starting with the 35 f1.4, which has a very strong character to its rendering. I've said it in my review of this lens that it's going to be quite polarizing, where some photographers will love this soap bubble style bokeh and others will prefer to opt for cleaner bokeh. In busy outdoor locations like this, I find that it can look a bit distracting in your images as there's just too much texture in the frame that takes away from your subject. However, in more urban locations, so for example, I did the review photo shoot of this lens in a cool sports seating arena kind of place, I think the photos look fantastic and the background is not nervous or distracting at all. That said, in general, this lens can work really well if you like a more vintage or stylized look to your photography. The 35 f1.8 sits right in the middle. It produces cleaner bokeh, so if you look at the images side by side, you can see the difference where you have all that texture in the f1.4 background, but the f1.8 background is nice and smooth. However, since it is 1.8, you are going to see the smallest bokeh of all three lenses and the least separation. Finally, the f1.2 lens has the most bokeh and it is incredibly clean and smooth. Nikon didn't cut any corners when it came to the optics of this lens. In terms of practical use, you can see quite a large difference between the f1.2 and f1.4 lens bokeh. However, when you look at the f1.8 versus 4 bokeh size, they do look incredibly similar. The small difference in f-stop between f1.4 and 1.8 isn't super noticeable in real-world shooting. It's more about which bokeh style you prefer.
So for this comparison, we're gonna take a full body shot, and I've got the background like super far away from Devon, starting off on the 1.2.
Something else you need to keep in mind is if you shoot a lot in low light, you might need to bump your ISO a bit more. When it comes to sharpness and overall image clarity, the 35mm f1.2 is the most defined of all three lenses. You can see a lot of texture and fine details in every shot. So when looking at the comparison images coming up soon, keep an eye on Devon's eyelashes, eyes, freckles, and hair. That's where you can really see the differences. I also appreciate that you are able to capture this level of detail wide open at f1.2.
I'm back on the 35 1.8, and I do have to have my shutter speed at 1/250, which is a little bit slow. Here we are shooting quite like slow pace, so it's not too bad, but if this was a wedding or we had to move a little bit more, I would want a slightly faster shutter speed. And I can also see on the back of the camera already the difference in bokeh between the 1.2 and 1.8.
The 35mm f1.8 is also very sharp and performs well even when using it wide open. While it's not quite as crisp as the f1.2, it does still retain a really high level of detail. You're getting clean, defined images, which makes it a strong option if you're looking for a more affordable, lighter lens while still getting excellent results. The 35mm f1.4, on the other hand, is slightly softer wide open. Fine details aren't as pronounced compared to the f1.2 and even the 1.8. You can absolutely still capture sharp images. As you can see from this photo shoot, we had plenty of in-focus photos. However, it is the least defined of the three. All around, the f1.2 had the best autofocus performance. It's also the only lens here that uses a dual stepping motor system, whereas both the f1.8 and f1.4 use a single stepping motor. When these Nikon f1.4 lenses were first announced, it was a little bit confusing coming from the traditional thinking that aperture determines the quality of the lens. Usually wider equals better quality. So back with EF glass, for example, you had the Nifty 50, which was an f1.8 and was the slowest performer with the least sharp images. Then you had the f1.4, which was a bit faster and sharper, and finally the f1.2, which was the top of the line. However, in this case, Nikon, and now other brands are doing it too, have changed it up. So in the case of these three 35mm lens options, it's actually the f1.4 which is the least sharp, then the f1.8 is sharper and faster, and finally the f1.2 which is still the top of the line. Across all three lenses, distortion is pretty well controlled. Even wide open, I didn't notice any major distortion issues or vignetting that would be a problem in real world shooting. In terms of chromatic aberration and fringing, the 35 f1.2 has the best handle on this out of all three lenses. The 1.8 and the 1.4 do have a bit of fringing going on.
So right here we're doing like a headshot style photo. This spot is so pretty. We've got like really soft light and bokeh in the background, of course.
Finally, we have a close-up portrait to take a look at. The out-of-focus fall-off really shows the differences between these lenses. In terms of sharpness, all three performed well here, but the f1.2 yet again produces the smoothest and nicest out-of-focus areas. The f1.4 is next in line, while the f1.8 has the least pronounced fall-off. With the f1.2, you also have the flexibility to stop down if you want less of this effect, but the option for maximum smoothness is there, which is something I personally love for portraits. You'll see that characteristic bokeh come into play again with the f1.4. In this shot, I think it does add a bit of charm to the photo since there is only a small amount of the bokeh in the corner of the frame, compared to our other shots where the entire background has bokeh and that texture becomes overwhelming.
And last but not least, I have the 1.4.
Overall, I really love the 35 f1.2. It gives you a look that's almost like a 50 or 85mm portrait lens, but in a wide angle format. For photographers who enjoy shooting portraits with a 35 like me, it allows for cinematic subject separation and a more pronounced background to foreground effect. If I were a full-time Nikon shooter, the f1.2 would be my lens of choice. That said, if I wanted something lighter for travel or longer days of shooting, the f1.8 is an excellent alternative. And for hobbyists or anyone working on a tighter budget who like the more characteristic bokeh rendering of the f1.4, that one is still a good option in that case. So I hope this video has helped you out deciding which 35mm is right for you for Nikon. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. But as always, thank you so much for watching. I make new videos every single week and I'll see you all next time. Bye!